Why, hello, and welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, co-host of It's the Pictures podcast, and my pronouns are he, him.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association as well, and also a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Woo!
Yow!
It's a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff. My mouth's tired.
All right, gang. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about a couple movies, but before we get into that, just wanted to mention very quickly, over on Ye Old Patreon, this week we talk about Ye Old Crazy Stupid Love, starring Steve Carell, Julianne Moore, Emma Stone, and we chose that one because we wanted to choose movies that were Academy Awards adjacent. In this case, Emma Stone won Best Actress for, what was it?
Poor Things.
Poor Things, which I saw and liked very much, but for some reason I was like, Poor Things, I can't remember that. And so we chose Crazy Stupid Love, and it also has some other Academy Award adjacent people in it. Your Ryan Goslings, your Julianne Moores, etc., etc. This week on the show, we are talking about two movies. The horror-ish found footage movie, Late Night with, I almost called it Last Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil, which we've been singing.
And also the Roadhouse remake, directed by Doug Liman, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. But first, we're going to talk about Late Night with the Devil. I almost said Last Night with the Devil again. I don't even know. I haven't thought to say that even once. I've just been, it's called Late Night with the Devil, which is correct. But now, for some reason, when it counts, I'm like, duh. Okay, so anyway. This is written and directed by Cameron Cairns and Colin Cairns. It stars David Dastmalchian, Laura Gordon, other people, and
others, and the rest.
Yeah.
This is like OG Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Reminds me of this great Dave Attell joke. He's like, I've been reading a lot of books lately, by Hemingway and that other guy. Anyway.
Oh, Dave Attell.
Yeah. So here's the one sentence IMDb description of Late Night with the Devil. A live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. Well, that's not entirely accurate.
So evil doesn't come through the TV and start strangling people?
I mean, there's an indication that it does.
Oh. But
you would think that, if this were a thing that happened and, there's a really irritating 6-minute voiceover at the beginning where it's like, blah, 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 backstory, blah, blah, blah.
I actually don't find it very annoying. It's Michael Ironsides.
It was Michael Ironsides, which is interesting considering this is an Australian movie. How creepy is that?
I know. But I actually liked that. I liked that voiceover. I knew you would.
I thought the voiceover was fine, but I think that all of that stuff, especially considering they come back to it so much, they could have weaved it in over the course of the story.
I do agree with you on that.
And the other thing about this is, as far as evil coming into the televisions, coming through the televisions, there is the hint of that because you see that face at the end.
Yes.
But at the same time, if this is a movie that they're showing and they're presenting it as a documentary, there are clearly some people who didn't, get possessed via their televisions. If they're making this fucking movie. Megan.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this the 10-cent tour. You tell me if I've left anything out.
Okay.
So you've got this guy, David, what's his last name?
Dastmalchian?
No, not the actor.
Sorry.
It's Jack.
It's Jack.
Jack Delroy. He's a late night host. He's opposite Carson, and you get the impression that he's Carson's only competition at that time. So I guess Dick Cavett wasn't fucking doing anything. And he's, a close second and then a distant second. And he's got this lovely wife who is stricken down by cancer, but maybe because he made a deal with the devil because he's part of a secret cabal, which is kind of, it's kind of like being a Mason, I guess, except evil. And so his wife dies of cancer, and he comes back to the show, and the show's taking a shit, and
you're not wrong. No, you're not wrong.
And so he decides to have a whiz bang Halloween episode, and you find out later that he's, through his evil Mason group, he's made a deal not with the devil necessarily, but with some satanic adjacent entity.
Something smarmy and insidious.
And so the show ends up basically going to hell, literally. And
the studio is like, you're in hell now.
No. There's a big part. There's the girl Lily,
right,
who is possessed. Because there's this whole side thing about how there was this cult to this demon, and the cult leader had all the people kill themselves by setting themselves on fire, and she's the only one who was rescued. And she's now living with the parapsychologist who's studying her and is also adopted her. Not a conflict of interest at all. And no. And so Lily and this Dr. June, are there on the show, and Dr. June and what's his name? Oh my God. I can't think. Jack. Thank you. Jack Delroy. They're, you kind of find out through their interactions that they're dating or there's something going on between them. So yeah. And he wanted Lily on to show, the authenticity of her research and to show that she's possessed. And June doesn't want to call the demon and all that, but then that happens. And then, and then literally her face splits in half and starts murdering people.
Yeah.
Her face murders people?
Yeah, her face, her head splits and there's all this electricity and light coming out of it, and then people are murdered through it.
Yeah, she garrots June, which actually, of all of the deaths in this movie that I was only bummed out about one. I'm like, June didn't really deserve that.
Yeah, no.
And it was and it's just kind of cruel because you can tell that her character kind of knows it's coming.
Yeah.
And the demon, whatever. I mean, it's not the demon Abraxas, which is the demon they keep naming. It's like some sub-demon that works with Abraxas. There's a hierarchy. There's a bureaucracy to hell, I guess, is what
demon,
we're getting at.
Executive assistant to the demon.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, bureaucracy
assistant
does
to the regional manager demon.
Right. It does make you feel like you're in hell, so it makes sense that, hell would be bureaucracy.
Completely.
Very Good Place-esque.
I mean, to many people, hell is a bureaucracy, right? So it's totally.
Exactly.
So there are some really good practical effects in this, some not great digital effects, but the final one where her her face splits in half is actually pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't really look real, but it's cool, and after, the sidekick gets his head twisted backward, and then the skeptic, what happens to him? He burns alive, right?
Yes.
Yep. The demon burns him alive. Garrett's Dr. Ross Mitchell. Most of the audience, I think everybody else escapes except for Jack, who it looks like he leaves, but then he kind of gets called into a dream realm where it's spelled out. And I usually don't like it when this happens, but it's spelled out very clearly exactly how he made his deal. And it's definitely a monkey's paw kind of deal, because as it turns out, the thing that he had to give up was his wife.
Yep.
And then I think that's supposed to imply that the demon inhabiting his wife's body / memory, whatever, tricks him into stabbing the little girl to death.
Yes.
And so that all happens. he's dreaming that this thing happened, but his ghost wife is like, you've got to you've got to pay the price, which is to kill her, I guess. And so he picks up this knife that had been there for, it was something from the house that burned, right? An artifact that survived.
It's like a sacrificial knife.
And I wondered when that knife was going to come back into play, because it's like, I was like, why would you leave it next to the kid? Because I thought the kid was going to pick it up and like stab him or something like that.
Right.
No. He picks it up and thinks he's stabbing his dead beloved wife, but he's actually stabbing the 11-year-old girl. And he's there in the studio, and everything really has happened as it was shown on the TV broadcast. And you hear all the sirens in the background, and you realize that the monkey's paw deal he made is he's going to get his new contract, but unfortunately he won't be able to work under his new contract because he will be in prison for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Womp,
correct.
womp.
Womp, womp, indeed. Sad trombone. What's the Price is Right thing? Bump, 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 bump.
Oh, I love The Price is Right.
So that's how it went down. Megan, what do you think of Late Night with the Devil?
I thought this was fantastic. I loved it. I thought it was great. I have always liked David Dastmalchian. I think he is fantastic here. I don't know if this is his first leading role, but it's certainly one of. And I think he's really, really great. I think he's far and away the best performance in this film. I think he really anchors everything. It's very clear that he's very likable. He's very affable, but he's wrestling with a lot of demons, proverbially and literally, apparently. And and as the film unfolds, you find out, he's not really that nice, because he's not that nice to his assistant Gus, who's kind of like the announcer,
the Ed McMahon.
Yes, thank you. And Gus keeps trying to talk to him about things, and Gus isn't comfortable with all the occult things happening on the show, and he just keeps brushing him aside. And he's not a total dick to him, but he's not nice and really listening either. So it's like you start to get a sense like, oh, this guy isn't as nice as he seems to be. And then more of that, kind of is you find out as things unfold. But yeah, I think this is a real slow burn. Literally, because things go up in flames at the end. But yeah, I really liked this. I like how it feels like an actual TV broadcast. And I was reading the press notes, and the Cairns brothers were both I think they're brothers. The Cairns directors, they were talking about how they wanted it to feel like an actual TV broadcast, and that's like everything they did was to make sure it felt that way, from authentic lighting and to sometimes having the boom in the shots and things like that. They really wanted to capture that, and I think it does. And like, some shit's gonna go down. You don't know what's gonna happen, but right from not just because of the Michael Ironsides intro, but also just even without that, you would know. You feel it. You feel this kind of like malevolent like atmosphere that's coming.
There's
and then
weight.
Yes, and then there's also that guy Christo, who's he's a medium, and he's like doing and he's like doing stuff with the audience, and he's kind of like fishing for answers. So you're like, okay, this is all. He's a charlatan, as most, if not all of them are, depending on what you believe. And so it's very clear he's a charlatan. But then he starts getting like taken over by something, and there's like, he looks like he's in severe pain because something is coming through. And then he ends up getting like whisked off stage because he like collapses. And then you find out later in the movie that he's died like on his way to the hospital. And so that's happening. So all this shit is like going on. And the Dr. June keeps saying like, I don't think we should bring Lily out. I don't think she's ready. And like, so this is all building and building and building. There's all this momentum. And I think when you have a slow burn that's doing that, you need to have a good payoff. And I think this is a fantastic payoff, both thematically, like to find out, like to your point, Dave, that, he really did, like, yes, he's going to get his deal, but can't enjoy it. Like, fuck you, dude. And, that's quite, a punch to the gut. But then also visually, like what's happening with all of the really disturbing murders. So I thought this was great. I loved the effects. I loved the cinematography. I really, like I said, I loved David Dastmalchian. I thought this was great. I'm not always a fan of found footage. Sometimes it depends, but this was great. I had a blast with it.
Yeah, this is kind of like fake found footage if you think about it, really, because the
Yes,
format is
yes.
like a TV show.
Right.
And then the other stuff, you can just pass it off as BTS. You know, it doesn't
Yes,
really
yes.
feel like found footage. And it's not really shot like found footage when they're behind the scenes either.
No, but I like that it's kind of dabbling in that realm, but it's not. Yeah. No, I really liked that a lot.
And during the broadcast, they do cheat a couple of times with
Yes.
the angles, because they're not just shooting from 3 angles. There's like there are some cutaways and things like that don't go with. If you've ever seen how large a TV camera is, it doesn't go with the TV cameras. So I really liked this a lot.
Good.
I think that I was really bummed out that Dr. Ross Mitchell like bought it in the way that she did.
It's sad.
Especially considering she wanted no part of it, you know?
Right.
And it is also interesting that Lily ended up getting, you know, you would think that the demon would want its favorite conduit to stick around, but I guess not. She's good in that part too.
Yeah, she is. She's very good.
Good makeup too.
Mhm.
I the whole you know, the worms crawling out of the body thing was gross.
That just sounds gross. I don't even need to know more about it.
The skeptic is convinced that Lily is not really possessed, that she's just being hypnotized, even though she levitates in a chair. But he's utterly convinced, and so he hypnotizes Gus, and Gus thinks he has worms coming out of himself, and he slices open his stomach with his hands and like literally rips his stomach, and there's worms.
Ew.
Because that's what he's most afraid of, is worms.
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, it is very gross.
Oh, and we should mention that the skeptic used to be a magician, so he knows how to do this stuff still.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he spends his time now investigating cults and things like that.
Yes, and paranormal, all sorts of things.
Yeah. But, you know, Dr. Ross Mitchell didn't say that she had PhDs in parapsychology and psychology like Dr. Venkman, so maybe that's why she's not.
As soon as you said parapsychology, that's all I could think of.
Yeah. What exactly are you a doctor of, Mr. Venkman? Well, I have PhDs in parapsychology and psychology. Yeah, this is really good. I think that I'm of two minds about the slow burn, because I like a slow burn too, but I actually think that because it more or less follows the timing of a television show, the slow, like it feels like there are pieces of the burn that actually burn more quickly.
That's fair.
I think it all works out really well in the end. And I think David Dastmalchian is really good.
Yes.
He's got a really I mean, you kind of think this guy doesn't have an expressive face, but he has a really expressive face.
He does. He does. What I think is also really great about him is that, and not all actors can do this, but it's like he has the veneer of like a happy-go-lucky, cheery guy, but then behind that, you see this kind of like pain and concern and like worry about like all the shitty shit he's done. And so I love that those conflicting emotions are playing out on his face.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just looking at some photos of him over here on the IMDb, and he looks like a very happy guy.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't have anything else to say except that, Evan, I think you might dig it, except maybe for the worms.
Yeah, you didn't like the worms.
I didn't like the worms either. So I think if we haven't spoiler pieced you into it, you may consider it, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. What I'll also say that may add more to the spoiler piecing is that in the press notes, the directors were talking about like what inspired them. And since they're Australians, they talked about the Don Lane show, which was a huge late night Australian show. But they said what was funny about it is Don Lane was not Australian, so which is kind of interesting. And he liked to bring a lot of occult people on, and he had like this kind of meltdown on stage because there was a skeptic who was on who debunked I never can remember the guy's name, Yuri something, the spoon bending guy.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like outraged and he like kicked some chairs and like stormed off. So they said that they were inspired by that in addition to horror films from the 70s. And they also were thinking of like Network and King of Comedy. And so they said this all kind of like coalesced into their creation of this film. And I think what's great is it definitely wears its influences, but I think it's doing its own unique thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
I just said it twice.
You agreed so much, you had to repeat yourself. And I love that.
You've officially spoiler pieced me into wanting to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
my work here is done. So how about we move on to Roadhouse? No, not the Patrick Swayze 1989 classic ?
I wish.
But the 2024 Doug Liman directed remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Jessica can't remember her last name.
Jessica Williams.
Jess Williams, right. And the boxer, Connor, what's his face, and people that you've seen before and other things. Also stars an American crocodile, which, yes, there are crocodiles in America if you go far enough south.
I didn't know that. This is something the movie taught me. I thought it was just alligators in Florida. I didn't realize there were crocodiles as well.
Yeah. I mean, they're called crocodiles, but I think they are more like alligators. I don't think you get the real crocs until you get into the southern hemisphere. But don't quote me on that. I'm only knowing what I know from Crocodile Dundee. So
another Australian connection.
That's
and another David Dastmalchian connection is Daniela Melchior is in this, and they both were in Suicide Squad together.
Right. So Roadhouse. Ex-UFC fighter Dalton takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not all it seems. Well, I mean, I guess.
I mean, the Keys are pretty awesome. As someone who honeymooned there, I can attest.
Yeah.
If only this was actually filmed in the Keys, but alas.
Where was it filmed?
Dominican Republic.
It's
close, but
I mean, that
you know.
it has an ocean, so
it does, yeah. And they, by the way, sidebar, they built that bar. They built it from the ground up. Like that's all handmade. Like, well, I mean, not handmade, but it's all made. They did not find a bar because they wanted to build a location that had the ocean in the front and like a highway in the back. They were very specific about the.
Well, of course, they had to drive a boat and a truck through it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the bar looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is in some ways very similar to the 1989 Roadhouse, but also miles apart.
Yes.
Miles and miles.
I mean, for one thing, it's a whole hell of a lot slicker, and that's not a compliment it's neither a compliment nor is it a detriment. It's just a statement of fact because Doug Liman doesn't really post Swingers, doesn't really make things that aren't polished to shit. So what has Doug Liman been doing? I don't even know. And
Edge of
course,
Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. That's right. That was good.
Edge of Tomorrow was great.
He did make some stinkers though, but we shall gloss over those for now. Because I can't remember what they're called except for the jumping one with Hayden Christensen. So
Jumper.
There you go. I should have known. The jumping one. You mean Jumper? Yeah. Yes, that one.
Yeah. I've always felt that was one of those ones that had a great idea and botched execution. Absolutely.
So anyway, this the story, the two screenwriters, or one of the two screenwriters of the OG Roadhouse gets a story credit here. And then, screenplay by two other peeps. And the difference here is that Jake Gyllenhaal is not an NYU philosophy grad who reads Jim Harrison, which I had not. I was incorrect. I had seen Roadhouse before, but
Surprise.
I did run through it kind of quickly, and I had never picked up on the fact, because why would you, that he's reading fucking Jim Harrison on the first night you see him in his apartment. And it's just like, well, of course, Rowdy Harrington would have him read fucking Jim Harrison. So That's Patrick Swayze, though. So this character is he seems simultaneously amused and bemused by everything going on around him.
Yeah, he's smirking a lot. He's got that
Smirking
Jake
a lot.
Gyllenhaal smirk.
Yeah. But also kind of follows the, without ever saying it specifically, the be nice thing that Patrick Swayze does in the first movie.
Yeah. Be nice until
Also,
you're
don't
not
take it
nice.
outside. Right. Also, don't take it outside as much as they should. But that's okay. Sometimes things happen. So the plot is that you've got this developer who's a scumbag trying to take over all this land on the Florida Keys so he can put up a big hotel for rich white douchebags, as Jess Williams describes it, and which is probably a scenario that I can see playing out. And so there have been these people creating a whole lot of trouble in the bar for the past few months, and Jess Williams has gone to look for somebody else. I don't remember what his name is. But anyway, she sees that Jake Gyllenhaal is about to go into a bare knuckle boxing match, and the guy won't fight him once he realizes who it is. And she's like, I want to hire
Malone.
you.
Post Malone refuses to fight him.
Yes, Post Malone refuses. That's right. Conor McGregor, that's who the other fighter is in this movie. So she hires him. He goes down there, and it turns out he's Jake Gyllenhaal's an ex-UFC fighter who I guess killed his friend in the ring because the guy made him too mad. It seems a little vague, and so it's similar to the plot that of the first one, that some rich asshole's trying to take over the thing and has been sending in these other assholes, and then the Roadhouse manager person it's not the Double Deuce, but the Roadhouse is beating the shit out of everyone, and they send in more guys, and he beats the shit out of them, and then he sends in the psycho, and they beat the shit out of each other, and you think the psycho dies, but he doesn't, because I guess that's supposed to be funny. I don't know.
Apparently.
I mean, the whole thing with Conor McGregor, I know that character is supposed to be one of those characters that is supposed to be funny, but that you're also supposed to be afraid of, but I just found him irritating. So, and also his teeth were really white. I have no problem with white teeth, but those were some white teeth.
Pearly whites.
Pearly whites. That's right, with an emphasis on wha. What everyone think of this? Evan, why don't you regale us with your feelings about the Roadhouse remake 35 years later?
I can tell you, as someone with a 6-month-old, that watching movies has become a much different affair these days. There's a lot of stopping and starting, which I feel like was throwing off my rhythm, and I'm sure there's things that I missed or I tried to rewind a few times, but I did enjoy this. As a fan of the original Roadhouse, I thought that they made a smart choice by having Jake Gyllenhaal's character be an ex-UFC fighter who's kind of drawn into it because he's down on his luck. He doesn't have other options, and I liked the kind of PTSD angle of it. Versus like in the Patrick Swayze Roadhouse, he's just kind of known for being a bouncer, and I'm like, who the fuck is a famous bouncer? That to me is just an absurd idea. That they're like, oh, we'll bring in Dalton, the fucking famous bouncer. Like,
yeah,
this is such a weird idea.
Yeah.
So I liked that they made him a UFC fighter. It made sense for him to be like a tough guy, somebody that they want to bring in to be an enforcer. So I thought the overall premise was good. And I liked the early scene outside the fight where that guy stabs him and he leaves the knife in and the guy runs away. He's like, here, well, you forgot your knife. I think that's a good intro to the kind of guy that he is. He'll take his licks and keep going. I liked Jake Gyllenhaal in this. I thought he was charming. I agree with you. He had the kind of like smirk going on, looking bemused the entire time. I think if it was someone else doing that, I don't think I would have liked it as much, but I think he kind of sold it, especially that scene where he beats the shit out of those guys in the very beginning when he first gets to the bar. He beats up that whole gang of bikers, and then he's driving them to the hospital in the minivan, and you just get that flash of him driving the van while Kokomo's playing, and they're all just bruised and battered.
He even says, he's like, there's a bump coming.
He warns them.
So I think this movie has a light touch that I appreciate to some of the grittier crime stuff. And Billy Magnussen, who I enjoy, I like seeing him play a heavy here, even though he's not much of a heavy. Conor McGregor does all the heavy lifting, so to speak. He totally is convincing to me as like the rich asshole son who's, taking advantage of the power vacuum of a dad in prison. That totally felt right to me. Yeah, I don't know. I dug this. I liked the action scenes, the kind of up close and personal fist fights. Although I feel like the first scene, the bare knuckle boxing in the ring, looked really fake to me. Did you guys notice that? When Post Malone was like beating the crap out of that guy and punching him, it almost looked like it was like fake. Like he was punching like a dummy or something. In a way that I don't know if it was like the footage was slow motion, so it was making a body look more rubbery, or it was strange because I didn't notice that in the rest of the movie. I liked the up close and personal aspects of the fighting, like the scene where Conor McGregor is fighting Jake Gyllenhaal for the first time, and they're like, he's getting like thrown over the bar, and they're fighting each other behind the bar. I liked all that kind of like up close personal stuff. Some of the like bigger set pieces feel kind of ridiculous and over the top, like the speedboat crashing into the bar, and just like all the stuff on the boat with like the gigantic bomb, like the dynamite that he blows up the giant yacht. And there's just some things that just felt kind of like way a little bit over the top, but I was here for it. I enjoyed it. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. I think I need to look more at my notes, but I was about this movie.
How about you, Megan?
So I really liked Jake Gyllenhaal in this. I completely agree with you, Evan. I think he's really charming. I like how he's very adept at playing someone who is unhinged, or who can like unravel at a moment's notice. He is very, very, I was going to say good, but no, he's excellent at that. And I agree with you. I think it was a smart change to make him a UFC fighter. I like how he's so, like, he's like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to fight me, dude. And like, and then yes, he's driving them all to the hospital. Also, I loved that Arturo Garcia's in this because I adore him. He was so good in Broad City. He's great whenever he pops up. Yeah, he's great in The Menu. He's great in Broken Hearts Gallery. He's just a delight, and I love him, and I want him to get more roles because he's so good, and I think he's very funny and sweet here. But yeah, no, I really like Jake Gyllenhaal in this performance. It's funny because the last thing I saw Jake Gyllenhaal in was Michael Bay's Ambulance, which is one of the most bonkers movies I've ever seen. And it's amazing. Like, I straight up love it. Like, it's crazy. And I think that's what this film is missing for me. Like, I wanted it to ratchet it up. I wanted it to be more nuts, more bonkers. But there are things I like. Like, I like that I like the beach location. I like that it's the Keys, even though it's really not, but I like that it's supposed to be in the Keys. I love the bar. Like I said, the production design is fantastic. I love that bar. I love how the cameras are fluidly going, in an inside outside. I also like the fight scenes a lot too. I think they're well shot and well choreographed, and for the most part, they look good. Sometimes they don't. Like, I'm not really here for like the POV video stuff. Game shit. Yeah. I'm like, no, this is bad. Like, no, this doesn't look good. But most of the fight scenes look good. Unfortunately for me, that's kind of, and I know that's like the crux of the film. Like, I just basically said the bulk of it, but the rest of it just kind of didn't work for me. Like, the supporting performances didn't really work. The other stories didn't really work. Not that they're, or is a lot of other stories. It's kind of just basically this main story. But it made me just want to go back and watch the original, which is ridiculous in its own way. And I love Patrick Swayze. He is amazing. What a gem. And I love Sam Elliott. And you don't have a Sam Elliott character here who's like, are we going to fight? Well, I'm not going to show you my dick, which is one of the most absurd and hilarious lines of dialogue I've ever heard in a movie.
It is.
Love it. But it's like,
Not
it's
gonna
so
show you my dick.
yeah, it's so entrenched in 80s nonsense. And I love that about that movie. Like, it's just such a fun movie to watch. Like, it's just absurd and ridiculous. And I wish there was more absurdity in this. I wish it wasn't so slick. This really reminded me, though, of Reacher. Like, here's a dude who's just, right?
Totally.
Right? Like, here's a dude coming into town on a bus with nothing on him, you know? And that's exactly what Jake Gyllenhaal is doing. And it so reminded me of Reacher and just made me want to watch the original Roadhouse and Reacher again, which, you know, that's not bad. But yeah, so this wasn't like terrible or anything, but I found myself kind of bored through a lot of parts, and I kind of wanted more nonsense, more absurdity. But I will say Conor McGregor, like, I know this is his first film. Oh, he's trying hard, but his unhinged villain just did not work for me, unfortunately, at all.
Yeah, he's definitely a weak point in the movie. I think it's
Yeah.
because he's like smiling and laughing in a way that just doesn't quite make sense. Like, I feel like when you have the mad dog killer type that he's supposed to be playing, like, he's not doing something right there. It's just
Yeah.
not, it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like on paper it could, because I you know, there's been so much discourse around Dune that I'm thinking of like David Lynch's 84 Dune, and you have Sting, who is essentially doing that. He's a sociopath and he's laughing and cackling while he's like trying to murder people. And so I feel like that performance is ridiculous, but I love that performance. And so I feel like it could work. I just don't feel like Conor McGregor is an actor. Like, I just don't feel like he has the acting chops to
No.
pull that off, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a real weak link in this.
Yeah, sadly.
It's like, I mean, he's just irritating. He's not funny, and he's not really all that scary.
No,
So,
it was just irritating. You nailed it, Dave.
and then, you know, you never, like, there are two, I wouldn't call them set pieces because you don't see them happen. He destroys like an entire villa in Italy, apparently in about 8 seconds, if the movie is,
Mhm.
you know, because he's naked. All he's wearing is a pair of boots, and he's got his cell phone. I thought he was going to take his cell phone out of his ass when it rang, but he takes it out
Yeah,
of his
so
boot.
did I. They really made it seem like he was gonna, like, you know, pop it out of there and pick,
oh my
you know.
God.
But it's in his boot. So he answers the
Yeah.
phone, and it's douchebag Billy Magnuson's dad, who's in prison, saying, "I need you to clean up my son's mess." And Conor McGregor's like, "Sure." And then he's in this villa, and he stops this guy, and he's kind of doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger, "Give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle," except there's just a
Yes.
coat. And
Yeah.
then the reason the timing doesn't work is, you know, there are timing tricks in movies all the time, but in the time it takes him to get this coat off of this guy, and then put it on, the screen cuts to black, and then when it cuts back, the entire place is on fire. Now
Yeah,
you just
the whole
don't have
shop.
enough time. I know that's
Yeah.
supposed to be like, he's so crazy, look what he can do, but it's
Right.
just stupid. Yeah, the other thing is this has the same doctor subplot that the original Roadhouse does. It doesn't really work here. It doesn't really work in the original. It doesn't work here.
Agreed.
I'm not sure how much I buy Joaquim de Almeida as, you know, a sheriff, corrupt or not, but that's okay. He's barely on screen.
He often plays villains, so I'm
He
kind of okay
does,
with him
he
playing a
does.
corrupt cop.
Yeah.
I love when he says, "My friends call me Big Dick," and Jake Gyllenhaal says,
Well, I'm not going
I'm
to
not
call you
gonna-
that.
"I'm not gonna do that."
Yeah.
But he says it in a really fucking funny way that
Yes.
really made it work.
I
Yeah.
agree.
He's definitely, Jake Gyllenhaal definitely seems to be surveying everything with a raised eyebrow. Like, I can't believe what the fuck I walked into. That
Yes,
seems to be
yes.
like every look on his face is like, Jesus, I can't. Good God. I mean, you know, I liked a lot of the action. Some of it looked really corny, like the way they would blend together the digital stuff with the practical stuff. Like that first fight scene in the parking lot with the 5 bikers looks great. It's a
Yeah.
great scene. Even though it takes place at night, you can tell what's going on.
Yes.
And Jake Gyllenhaal, unless they put his face on a stunt performer's body, which they could do, but I don't think they did. He's doing those scenes because a lot of it's in wide shot.
Yeah, he did most of his own stunts.
But like later when the truck tries to, run him over in the middle of the road, and it's clearly like sped up digital, and then his body's digital, like flying over the top. That looked corny. It looked corny when Billy Magnuson flew out the front of the boat onto the roof of the roadhouse.
Yeah.
Oh, that looked so
When the
bad.
train hit the car in the beginning, that looked corny.
Yeah.
Oh,
When it clipped his
that's right.
car.
I also wonder what the wisdom is of breaking the neck of the son of the person who's paying you, which is what Conor McGregor does at the end of the movie. But,
Yeah.
in his defense, Ben Brandt was a little fuckhead.
I think he stopped doing it for the money and just was doing it for fun.
Right?
I don't think
That's what I
his
got,
character
too.
really was like, they wanted him to be so unhinged. He was like literally just doing this all for sport. So I could see him just saying, fuck it, this guy's annoying me too much, just snap his neck. What I really care about is fighting Jake Gyllenhaal to the death.
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of it I like. I mean, the original Roadhouse is too long. It's like an hour and 51 minutes or something. This is 2 hours and 1 minute. Like, why is this movie this long?
It doesn't
is-
need to be.
Yeah, it shocked me when I turned it on and saw the runtime.
Yeah. The whole
What?
subplot with the bookstore, I just don't even understand why that's there.
I
other
agree.
than to
sorry.
show that he's a human. you know?
Yes, which could be. I agree, but I will say I'm very irritated that the girl's father, played by Kevin Carroll, is not in it more because he is an excellent actor. He's great on The Leftovers and he's great on The Walking Dead and he's been in a ton of other stuff. Such a missed opportunity to not have him do more than what he's doing here.
Yeah.
But I agree that subplot is kind of, I don't know.
And then the subplot where, you know, Jess Williams like actually kind of knows what's going on and she's just hired Jake Gyllenhaal to like, it's nothing nefarious. You could have just said, listen, I know these guys. I know what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, there's really no difference in, I guess maybe the idea is she didn't want to scare him off by saying these moneyed people are
Yes.
trying to, but I don't, for $5,000 a week, I think he would have done it, you know?
Yeah. And he doesn't seem like someone who's scared off easily.
No, he's not.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Between all the shit that happens to him.
And it
Especially when that guy approaches him with the gun and he just like, well, you're
Yes!
not that intimidating. If I just break two of your fingers, you can't even fire the gun. And then he does it. And the guy's just like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Yeah, the other thing about that's kind of not about that part, but the part about how Jessica Williams doesn't tell him is that it like Jake Gyllenhaal at one point is talking to the girl Charlie who works in the bookstore and she's like, oh, this isn't just a Western. This is like a mystery. But there really is no mystery. I would have loved it
No.
if there had been. But no, he just wants to do some real estate development and some resorts. Like, that's it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the idea of like holding on to the business that your family business, but at the same time,
Oh, totally.
they probably are offering you a lot of money. So, oh, and then the craziest thing they keep mentioning, and I was wondering when this was going to come up. I did not expect it to come up like it did. One of the bikers that Jake Gyllenhaal beats up at the beginning shows up later at his boat where he's staying with a shotgun. And Jake Gyllenhaal's like, oh, come on, man. You're not going to shoot me with a shotgun. So he gets the guy to fire the shotgun twice, which empties it, even though it's pump action, but whatever, that's fine. Then he throws the guy out the window and he's trying to haul him back up on the boat. And then the crocodile that you've been hearing about attacks him and drags him under the water, which I was just like, I really thought this guy was going to be a bigger part of this story. I guess not.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen that actor, JD Pardo and stuff. So I was like, what? I thought
Yeah.
he was going to be like, I guess I thought he was going to be like the second in command under Billy Magnuson. I wasn't expecting the, Colin McGregor to be that guy, the nutty guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is like a 95-minute movie that they padded out, because
Yes.
it doesn't even really have subplots.
Not really.
You kind of have the
No.
relationship with the doctor, but it's really doesn't. I mean, they're in what, like 3 scenes together?
Yeah.
It doesn't really. I mean, of course, she ends up being the sheriff's daughter. Makes sense.
Of course.
Of course, she ends up being fake kidnapped, but then real kidnapped. The
Of
double
course.
cross. It's so
I do
bizarre.
like when he says that. He's like, ooh, double cross.
Yeah.
Ooh, double cross. Like,
Yeah.
double cross.
Yeah, he's acting so slick. But I do love after he's got the detonator that he's made for the bomb.
Yes.
He's hitting it. It's not going off. And then when it does go off, it fucks him up. And he's like, he opens his eyes, his ears are ringing. He can barely stand. Somehow he manages to knock a guy out with this like drunken punch that he delivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like it that he couldn't get it to go off and had to turn around and just be like 5 feet closer to it. Because anybody who's had a push button lock on your car knows how that works.
Yep.
So that was funny. I mean, and I also thought some of the humor, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is a little misplaced in this movie. Not just the Conor McGregor stuff, but I don't know. There's also just like, there are so many characters in this. It's like they tried to cram all the characters from the original movie in this, didn't give them as much to do, and made the movie longer somehow.
Yes.
So I just don't, he hires that one guy to be a bouncer, and the guy doesn't really ever have any lines of dialogue again. He's just like working there as a bouncer, which is okay, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
the guy with the scars on his knuckles.
Yeah.
He shows up a couple more times and has like a line or two. But I agree, it seemed like they're going to set him up to be a bigger character.
Yeah, and the same thing with the other bouncer. I can't remember what his name was. It was
Lucas
Dex?
Gage,
Oh, okay.
Billy.
Billy.
Oh yeah, Dex I think might be one of the other bouncers.
Yeah, they all kind of seem to have, like parts. It just, even in the old Roadhouse, like one of them will show up at the end of a scene and be like, huh, guess that guy's not going to be walking anymore, or whatever they say. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I like that the band was playing behind the chicken wire, like in the
Yes.
original Roadhouse.
Oh,
That's what I
would've
was going to say. And that I love that it's actually not just one dude, one band, the whole same band. Like it's multiple bands.
It's
and they're
a
all
different band every scene.
Yes,
That's right.
which is how it should be. And that's
Yep.
how it would be at a bar. And yeah, they're good.
And all of those bands are really good.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I
Um,
liked that.
And the music overall is good in this, actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would
it doesn't
agree with
have
that.
much of a score, but the score is serviceable. But then the incidental music, all this, bar band stuff is really good.
And
by the
some
way, did anybody-
instrumental Enter Sandman.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. When that started queuing up, I think I turned to Sean. I was like, is that the song that I think they're covering? Because I'm like hearing it at first. I'm like, no, they wouldn't go there. Oh, they are going there.
They did.
Did anybody notice, by the way, that in two things about this? In the original Roadhouse, so there's a band playing at the Double Deuce, or Double Deuce, is that what it's called? When Patrick Swayze first gets there with Kevin Teague or whatever. And
Yep.
it's Tito from Tito and Tarantula, who is the band in Desperado. And, well, they did a bunch of music for Desperado, but they're also the band in, what's the vampire movie?
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn. But it says, this happens in movies all the time. You'll have like a band playing and then it'll say musical performances by, and in this case, it's the Jeff Healey Band, but it shows over a different band. The Jeff Healey Band is the band that's performing the entire time down at the Double Deuce. It's a little thing. It drives me crazy. It's completely accidental. It doesn't mean anything, and it's a 35-year-old movie. So anyway, this I thought was fun, but had its flaws. It was definitely too long. There were, I think, between the action scenes when you're supposed to be getting kind of the story, it's like, okay, I just got some story, but who gives a shit,
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I did think during the final Conor McGregor fight that the use of stabbing weapons by Jake Gyllenhaal was rather ingenious in the end.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I dug that quite a bit.
I cannot believe that didn't kill the character. But-
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I was like, okay, he's down for the count. But then when I thought about it, I thought he stabbed him a few times, but I don't think he hit any. I don't think he did any
Right.
major damage to him because they both ended like in his shoulders or something. And I
Yeah.
thought, he could still be alive.
Yeah, he stabbed him in the gut a couple times. I mean, you hit
Yeah,
that
he did.
spleen and you're kind of over, I was kind of wondering, like, Jake Gyllenhaal keeps getting stabbed in the left side, like just where his rib cage ends. I'm like, the spleen's right around there, man. You got to be careful.
Yeah, you need a little more than duct tape to fix that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Good old duct
so
tape.
anybody have any more thoughts about the Roadhouse remake? Except big budget for an Amazon movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Some serious
Indeed.
fucking money went into this movie.
Well, yeah, and there's been a lot of off-screen drama surrounding this movie about, how the director said he was going to like boycott the premiere because he was mad that it was going to straight to Amazon and not getting a theatrical release. And then I think there was some drama around Joel Silver inserting himself too much into the production.
Oh, yeah. And then it was funny.
I forget what else.
Sorry. Then the other thing, because Doug Liman said all of that, I was supposed to get a theatrical release if everything looked great, and they told me it looked great. But then Jake Gyllenhaal was like, well, they always told me it was just going straight to streaming. So
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows?
the-
Maybe they were both told something different.
The common denominator is that there is always drama in behind the scenes in a Doug Liman movie. Always.
Oh,
You
good to know.
Born Identity had all kinds of problems. Mr. and Mrs. Smith had all kinds of problems.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Swingers had all kinds of problems because he and Jon Favreau apparently didn't like each other very much.
Oh,
Because Favreau, of course, wanted to direct it, but they couldn't get any
Right.
money because he'd never directed anything.
right.
So he had to
That makes
settle for
sense.
being a producer. And there's a couple movies that he didn't get made because he was so difficult. So anyway, that's, gossip, but it's gossip that gets repeated a lot. So I tend to believe, it's like you got a second, third, fourth, and fifth source. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
But
I think that's it.
Oh,
Oh, no, Megan.
Sorry,
go.
I was just gonna say, I think Jake Gyllenhaal is so good in this, and I would highly recommend if you haven't seen Ambulance, see it because he's wild in it, and that's a ridiculous
Oh.
movie.
Yeah, I want to see that. It looked like it was bonkers in the best kind of Michael
It
Bay kind
is.
of way.
And I don't like Michael Bay, but this was a blast. Like, it is so good. But yeah, so I think that's what I was kind of hoping this would ramp up a little bit more and be more like that. But yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal, great.
Is it weird that the only Michael Bay movie I really like is Pain and Gain?
Oh, I've never seen it, but
Oh.
it looks
No, me neither.
That movie's, you want to talk about loony. That movie's fucking
Yeah, it looks
loony.
it.
Alrighty. Well, I think that is it for this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. First thing I want to do is give a shout out to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you very much for being our sponsor piece patron.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
You just heard me clicking my pen twice. I want to thank our editor, Otto Klemmer, for being a great editor and making us sound great each week. Thank you, Otto.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much,
Otto.
Otto.
You can find Roadhouse on Amazon. You can find Late Night with the Devil somewhere. It's streaming somewhere.
No, it's not. It's in theaters.
Is it in theaters?
Yes. It's
Oh.
going. Yeah, and then it's going to be on Shudder on April 19th.
Okay. See, I knew it was going to be on Shudder. I just didn't know when. So there you go. April 19th. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you can find podcasts. If you want to check out our website, it's spoilerpiece.com. On social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. If you'd like to email us and get in touch and tell us the real minutia differences between Roadhouse and Roadhouse, you can do that at spoilerpiece@gmail.com.
Roadhouse and Roadhouse. I love
That's
it.
right.
Yep.
And if you didn't want to email us, but you wanted to do something else, like leave us a voicemail, you could give us a call
At 862-21-PEACE.
and leave a message and, compare the roadhouses. If you like the show, please consider...
Sorry.
It's okay. If you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, or you can rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. As I mentioned at the top, we spoke about Crazy Stupid Love, the 2011 movie that feels like it's at least a decade older, starring Steve Carell,
True.
Julianne Moore, and Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. My name is Dave Riedel. I write for the Chicago Reader. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And I'm on Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Dave Sees Movies.
My name's Evan Crean, co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s movie guide to Better Living, co-host of It's the Pictures podcast, which you can find wherever you get podcasts. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and where else? Blue Sky at Opinionist World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinionist.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.